Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Retire Wealthy and Happy podcast. I'm Roger Jacobson with my co-host Anthony Esparza, and today we have Mark Murphy with us. Hello, Mark. How are you doing today?
Actually, I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me, guys.
Thanks so much for being here. Why don't you start off by telling us a little bit about yourself and who you are and what you do?
I am a key business strategist, critical thinker, financial advisor to entrepreneurs and entrepreneurial thinking people. And I love the title of your podcast because, what we do is we specialize in helping people create multi-generational wealth.
That's awesome.
Mark, how did you find a career in what you're doing now?
When I started my company, it's been a long time, Anthony. I started 38 years ago. And I thought we'd be successful. I hoped we'd make money, but this was really my vehicle to make other people's lives better. I was always at my best when I was serving others. And so I just crafted a company where I could help the most amount of people possible. And then, you start to evolve. I remember, growing up dumb and broke in Suffern, New York, when I got out of the Kelley Business School at Indiana University, they offered me $1,000 a month. It wasn't even a salary; it was a draw against commissions. And I took the job because it was $1,000 a month more than I was making. And but I think quickly you realize that there were so many ways you could help, and there are so many things that there are so many places you could make a difference in the lives of the people you touch. And this was just my vehicle to be able to go do that.
I have always been working a lot more on my own personal income, looking at ways that I could build my net worth up. And more recently, I've been able to grow more into the mindset that I want generational wealth. So I have a few questions for you. Let's break it down for some of our listeners. First of all, what is generational wealth?
I think it's to be able to do what you want to do with who you want to do it anytime you want to do it. And it's about financial freedom. I think too much emphasis in our country, Roger, is about success being defined only as wealth. I think to me a successful life is, people always say to me, do you have a business life or do you have a personal life? And I go, I just have a life. I just go from one thing I like to something I like more to something I like more than that. And that's whether it being with my 5 kids or going to ball games or spending time at our Palm Beach house or working with clients. It just seems, that each day is a great day because I'm not doing the stuff I don't want to do. And I'm only doing the stuff that gets me excited, or it keeps me in my unique ability.
That's awesome. What are some examples of ways that people have achieved generational wealth that you've worked with?
I always start with most people. I created a pyramid to create multi-generational wealth, sort of a game plan for people to do it, because I realized that virtually nobody's creating financial independence as a percentage. And very few people, almost not, if even less than that, are creating multi-generational wealth. So what I've always thought is that one of the reasons that I've observed that people either fail or don't have the success that they should have is because they don't have cash confidence. And cash confidence to me is literally everything from cash in the bank to ARR, to annual recurring revenue that they can count on a going forward basis. And so having said that is, I created a lot of my wealth when I had cash and somebody else needed cash. And also on the flip side, if you have a bad quarter, a bad 6 months, a bad year, you can't turtle your business plans. You've got to have the ability and the cash confidence to withstand any sort of temporary adversity, and so that you can continue to move on with your long-term plan. So for both the abundance and scarcity mode, cash confidence is the number one thing. And then the second thing, and I could speak about this for 4 hours, and I promise I won't. But I was going to say that the second thing is that if you only have $1 to invest, I suggest that our clients always feed their money machine. And for a lot of entrepreneurs, that's their business. For other people, it's real estate. And for others, it's funding other operating companies. But that's where ultimately I think people have to have the patience and the courage to be able to invest in themselves. And so, my mantra is that I only have 2 things. I think there are expenses and there are investments. And I have no appetite for expenses. And if you're an expense, you're always on the chopping block. But if you're an investment, as long as I can get a 4 or 5 to 1 return on my money, I have almost an unlimited appetite for investment.
So as far as investments go, you mentioned real estate or whether that's your money making machine, it could be your business. What do you do personally? What's your strategy? Do you invest heavily into real estate? I know you said you got your business now. Do you have any side businesses or are you
Oh,
investing in any other
yeah.
businesses?
Well, absolutely. To me, here's what I've said. I've said this for probably 30 years, Anthony. I've said money market CDs, IRAs, 401ks, stocks, bonds, mutual funds, blah, blah, blah. Most of our clients have some or all those assets. Most of our clients will have some or all those assets all their life, but at best, they're inflation adjusted holding tanks. Bill Gates was on the call. He wouldn't say I'm worth $110 billion because of my 401k. And I like 401ks. True wealth is created in one of three areas. It's investing in your business or some other operating company. It's investing in real estate. It's financing deals. So that doesn't mean that I don't have money in the stock market or I don't have money and certainly have money in cash or other things. But the idea is that what I'll do is I will feed my money machine, which is Northeast Private Client Group first. I then put my money into generally income producing real estate because I want annual recurring revenue that's independent from my business as the CEO and owner of Northeast Private Client Group. And then I invest in a lot of private equity, but it's not private equity where I'm taking a lottery ticket or I'm hoping the smartest guys in Wall Street or Silicon Valley can find the cure for cancer or the next great widget. I'm investing in companies where you generally take a board seat on, put my money involved, and I can generally have the ability with my network to be able to move the needle on that company. And so I don't have, I don't have time to have any other full-time jobs. I'm the CEO of Northeast Private Client Group. So I need things like real estate, which is a little bit more passive, at least to me. I've got some people that run it for me, but more passive. And I'd like to be, spend time on those boards, steering companies and moving the needle. But I can't have another full-time job. We've got to hire C-suite people to go run those companies. And, and ultimately, I think that everything to me is about collaboration, meaning virtually anybody who's relatively smart, who wants to work their ass off, can get a 1x, a 2x, a 3x on their wealth. But I think that if you want to get a 10x or a 50x or a 1000x on your business, it's all about collaboration. It's not how do we do it, it's who do you need to collaborate with to go do it. And ultimately, it's the power of collaboration that to me is the secret wealth turbocharging, variable.
What forms
Awesome.
of, sorry,
Oh, you're good, Roger.
what forms of real estate are you currently invested in?
I've got a couple of opportunity zone deals that I invested in a few years ago. I've got money in some apartments. I've got money in a little bit of money in self storage, and and then you've got other rental homes and so forth.
That's great. I have somewhat similar portfolio, so not super and really happy with a lot of them right now. Interest rates, taxes, and insurance have been going through the roof, and the values have gone down. Currently, I'm more interested in industrial than anything else. Less competition and a higher bar to join in. So that's one of my interests.
I think real estate is particularly the to me the when I start getting stock tips, my dentist, I realize the stock market's about ready to collapse. I think it's the same when my dentist or my doctor becomes a real estate developer. I realize that's a sign of the apocalypse too. And so I'm always going contrarian in most things in life. If everybody, I'm not afraid to be different. I'm afraid to be the same. And I think for the most part, when you're following the crowd, you're always going to be buying high and selling low.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
I just saw a quote actually this morning that says, if you're thinking like everybody else, are you really thinking, or are you kind of just following that wave? You got to think different. You got to do the opposite.
I mean, yeah, it's great to have a seat at the table, but I'd rather build my own damn table and be opposite. In fact, the expression I've always heard that I was going to chuckle at is, if you're pulling a dog sled, if you're not the lead dog, the view never gets any better. And so, I think the idea is there are a lot of people that are not, really thinking with what they're doing. They're kind of following the path. I think in the financial world, a lot of the things that people are doing, if they really think about it, they do it with no thought or plan. and they do it with no synergy, meaning they think 1+1 = 2, where for most of the people, because they have no velocity on their money, 1+1 really equals 1.5. And really, we want 1+1 to equal 4 or 5.
Hmm.
So, an example that might be is, hey, it's great to put money in qualified pension plans because you got a tax deduction and, maybe it's tax deferred and maybe you got lawsuit creditor protection in most states. But what steps have you taken to get that money out on a tax advantage basis? Or, how does everything integrate into that business? What's the tax benefits of being able to own the building that your business operates in? How do you take advantage of bonus depreciation and accelerated depreciation, and how does that fit in with other things that you're doing to be able to go grow your money? And I always think that I was a competitive chess player when I was in high school, and I'm a master's bridge player. So I think 8 moves and 13 tricks ahead. And so in my mind, I always think, well, why would we solve one problem when we could solve 3 or 4? Everything has to have more than one spin.
There's always opportunity to tune up your business by even a 1%. You do 1% here, 1% there, and then now you're 20% better. So always opportunity. I see that a lot as well. There's some things I should be doing and kind of just goes over my head, but I know they're out there. It's like just need to fine tune those little areas and make it more efficient. Back to collaborating, you mentioned earlier. What are some steps you've taken to build your business in terms of collaboration to make it a better business?
Anthony, I decided 35 years ago that I wanted to be a hero to entrepreneurs and entrepreneurial thinking people. And so I basically built a business around collaborating with people and companies that wanted to be a hero to the same group, where that client immediately saw that entrepreneurial synergy. Because ultimately, I don't want a level playing field. I don't want to run straight downhill, which I thought was certainly an improvement on a level playing field. I want to play in a competition-free zone where the only place that client can get that experience is by working with me, or if you're my client, by working with you.
Awesome.
I love that. That's definitely similar to the Warren Buffett theory of having a business with a moat around it, something that protects you and, trademarks that keeps you different. So, for example, Pepsi can't use Coke's recipe. They can try and they can mimic it, but their branding and their recipe are theirs and their own. And so it's really hard to copy, and it gives you a big distance in the difference in what you can make and how business can be successful and grow.
Yeah, as I said, I think the other thing I think also in the entrepreneurial world, and I know you guys do an awful lot of work in real estate, so you've got to make sure that you can limit your downside to some of the, in real estate, sometimes that's a lot more difficult if you're a general partner, or if it's your project as opposed to a limited partner going forward. But I think that one of the things that entrepreneurs have in common is that they view failure as just another form of market research. That ultimately, that failure is just one step closer to success, because you don't have failure, you have either learning or success. You don't have failure. And so the idea, at least for me, I don't know about Roger, about you, or about you, Anthony, but if I hadn't done 3 or 4 things that failed, I wouldn't have done a couple of other things that made me millions or tens of millions of dollars.
Absolutely.
That's a good point. And it doesn't really matter how many times you fall down. It matters if you can get up after the last one.
I always say it's all BS, belief systems. And so the idea is, remember, for most people, that when they get their ass kicked, they get a pint of Haagen-Dazs and a blanket and crawl under the covers, and you never hear from them again.
Kind of looks like me right now.
Did you need some Haagen-Dazs?
Where's my Haagen-Dazs?
For anybody that's listening and wants to know, Anthony had a little scrape on the road after a little motorcycle thing. He's fine, but he's reclined back in bed and doing some recovery.
I'll be good by the weekend. Should be a steady limp by then.
Oh, that's good. Good. What else can we talk about, Mark?
I would venture to say that, to me, you go back to mindset. I go back to mindset all the time. And here's some things that I think are some rules that you have to have. There's a Chinese proverb that says, uh, someone who blames, I believe it's a Chinese proverb, says, one who blames others has a long journey. One who blames himself is halfway home. One who blames no one is there. And I think that when I see people not succeeding, I find one of the things I find in common with people that are not successful is they're doing a lot of blaming, a lot of complaining, and making a lot of excuses. So I think one of the things you have to do is you got to be very listen to no blaming, no complaining, no excuses. Going forward. I also think that the world is not served by playing small. So you want people to play big, play big going forward. And so the people that I look to bring in my world, I look for intelligence, but I look for intelligence in different ways. I mean, everybody knows what IQ is. I'm not saying you have to be a genius. You got to be pretty smart, but not a genius. EQ, I think people, that's pretty common. That's out there. EQ, is somebody happy? Are they sad? Are they reading the room? There's so many people who just are not reading the room. I mean, we've all been there where somebody just was not reading the room and just kept going on with what they were doing, and it was a disaster. I think there's SQ. I think part of success and playing big is people have to like you. It's social quotient. How do people like you? If they don't like you, they're not going to do business with you or be around you. But the intelligence that I find most interesting and most rare is AQ, which is adversity quotient, meaning when a deal's going down or things are happening and everything's fine, everybody's a hero, everybody's happy. But when you know what hits the fan, how do you flip the table, flip the script, turn that lemons into lemonade going forward? And I think the ability to have adversity quotient, that type of intelligence, is as valuable or more valuable than the others. But you have to have them all. I mean, you can't be a dummy, and you can't, you got to be able to read a room, and you got to be likable. But that's something that I think when in the world, we don't talk a lot about adversity quotient. We talk about the others much more than that.
That's a really good insight, and I love that. And right now, there's a lot of people that have done multifamily syndications, and if they could do anything to help themselves, in my view, it would be to grow their AQ, because right now there's a lot of, foreclosures, stuff going back to the banks, and the people that are doing the syndications have to be able to pivot as much as they possibly can to be able to grow any kind of, more NOI that they can. And then when they get to that point, they need to be able to go through that adversity, talking to their investors, talking to their property managers, talking to their banks and everybody else they can, in order to get through what could be a major bankruptcy or a slight default or a close call, depending on how they're set up and what they're able to do, how much they're able to pivot.
And the other thing I also think with people, that part of being the entrepreneurial world is you want to have a good time. If the host isn't having a party, nobody's having any fun. And I think I find so many folks that really good people, smart people, they're not enjoying what they're doing. And the expression, I love that expression. You can't see you can't see the forest for the trees. Or to me, another expression which I love is, it's hard to read the label when you're inside the jar. And I think ultimately that that part of that world is that it goes through the prism of I don't know if you guys are familiar with the Japanese term. There's a few pronunciations of it called ikigai.
I'm not.
So ikigai, I view that from that prism when I'm looking to do something, or maybe like what I did this morning. I was coaching one of my friend's kids who's graduating college this month and looking at some different opportunities. And I said to him this morning, I said, here's how I'd be looking at this job, because he had a few job offers out there and he's not sure what he wants to do, may go back to graduate school, different. His kid's got some options. And I said to him, here's the 4 questions I'd be asking myself. I would say, 1, am I passionate about this? 2, am I good at it? 3, does the world need that product or service? And the 4th is, can I get paid to do it? And so it shouldn't be a yes to 1 of them or 2 of them or even all 4 of them. It should be a hell yeah to all 4. And if it's not a hell yeah, I generally will not do it. Now, not everybody who's watching or listening to your podcast has the ability to be there, but that's where you want to aspire to be. I think that's where you guys talk about retiring well rich or financial independence, all the things that you guys espouse. You know, you want to get to that place where you have the ability to only work when you can answer a hell yeah to all four of those questions.
Absolutely, I agree with that. I've uh, I've definitely had opportunities where it sounds good and you make money, but maybe I'm not good at it or I don't feel passionate about it, and you kind of gotta let those run by.
The other thing I also think is that I always, when I hear people that are need to get out of their own way, it's they've got to change their story. Meaning what's the story you hear in business? If it is to me, B, it's up to me. I'm the only one that can do it. Well, if you're going to scale or build any kind of business, the likelihood of you being able to do everything and be that you'll be the bottleneck on the funnel, and you'll only hit a certain size of growth. And I think ultimately what entrepreneurs understand is that you don't really grow a business, you grow people. And so are you investing in people? And sometimes those people take not months but years to get a real return on. One of my pet peeves is when I talk to people and they say, my biggest expense is people and payroll. And I'll go, well, if they're an expense, we should fire them all. That how are your people? Why would you have them if they're an expense? And I think it's how that people look at those people. And I think that oftentimes I think the hard part is scaling. It's like a restaurant where they can be the best restaurant in the world because they have 9 tables. And they get so popular, they open a place that has 300 tables, and the whole thing's a disaster because you can't scale that 9-table restaurant like they had. They didn't have the skills to be able to go do that. And I think that's the mistake that many people make. But what far more people make is they don't even have the ability to scale. They just continue to, I mean, if you're working 14 hours a day, I'll tell you this: if you want to double your income, you can't double your hours because there's only 24 hours in the day.
Yeah.
I think it was Dan Sullivan that wrote the book 10x is better than 2x. And the point was, rather than trying to grow from you're doing 8 hours worth of work and doubling it and going to 16 hours of work, bringing in the people and the implementations that can help you scale and go directly from 1 to 10.
Yeah, Dan is brilliant. In fact, I have a few Dan Sullivan's isms that I love. One is he said, you got to win with the cards you have, not the cards you wish you had. And that doesn't mean we don't try to acquire the cards we want, but the idea is you got to win today with the cards you have. And he was the guy who got people to focus on their unique ability to get people to get rid of the stuff that they're crappy at, which is pretty easy for most people. But what he's so brilliant at, and there's so many things. In fact, he's certainly somebody that I am a huge fan and has mentored me. But I think the idea is that the thing that's hard to get rid of is things you're good at or competent at. The idea is that that you've got to be able to spend time working in unique ability. You want to be it's unique ability, and hiring people that's their unique ability, which oftentimes complements you. And so I think he's 80 years old right now, and he is a machine.
That's amazing, and I definitely feel the same way too. And also love the book Profit First, which was one of the earlier lessons I learned in real estate. Was we would do the math on flipping a house, and in order to qualify for a loan, it was an easy qualification, but you had to figure out your profit first. A lot of people will start business without a goal, without this is the profit that I want to get, and paying themselves first. They'll say, we want to earn this much money and then see what's left over. And you just can't do that when you have such high risk and high costs in house flipping. So that was another big insight for me in my life.
It's I think it is. I think real estate is clearly that people who the people that I work with have created significant wealth. Many of them have taken the cash flow from their money machine, which oftentimes is a business, and they put it into real estate being one of the primary assets to create those paychecks and playchecks, meaning you want a series of assets that will give you a guaranteed or a highly reliable stream of income. We'll call those paychecks. And you also want another series of assets where you can spend it, you can save it, you can give it away. But the important thing is will not be responsible for producing income for your family. So if you have both paychecks and playchecks, that's financial freedom. But there's still one more level. If you have an operating income or an operating business beyond normal retirement age, that's a vehicle where you can get tax deductions, you can run expenses through it, you could do things where you have earned income when most of your friends are worried about going to early bird specials or worried about living too long or making, choices, going down to one car instead of two, or, a lot of people are making some pretty draconian choices as opposed to choices of abundance by not having earned income beyond normal retirement age. And so that's what you want to do. You want to be in a position where, that you're making decisions for yourself. And, the difference to me between an entrepreneur and a non-entrepreneur is entrepreneurs get paid for what they know. Business owners get paid for what they do. And you can tell when you get to retirement who is a business owner who's bought themselves a job and who is an entrepreneur. And the entrepreneurs are always in creation and fascination mode. Their minds do not shut off. And you take a look at this is Dan has been helpful putting together strategies like this as well, Roger. We talk about things like one of the things that people who fail retirement. Now, many people succeed in retirement. They go, hey, I went down to Florida. I'm in this community, and it's like summer camp for retired people, and it's awesome. I should have retired 10 years ago. But entrepreneurs go crazy when they do that because one is there's no structure in that. You have no structure when you retire. Second thing is when you run a business, you have a team. You have a whole team around you. You got no team in retirement. But one of the biggest things I think is that, first of all, there's no risk, which means there's no excitement. And that's what ages people, not having any excitement in their life. And then last but not least is there's no applause. Nobody's telling you how smart you are, how successful you are, how amazing you are all day. None of that happens. And so, I think that ultimately when you talk to somebody who's saying, I can't wait to get to retirement, that is, I've never heard an entrepreneur say that.
Well, we'll pick that up later when we get to the final four. But a lot of times, the best thing you can do is find the passion that gets you up out of bed and the network that keeps you going. And for me, it's like there's a lot of things that I enjoy outside of real estate, and it's motorcycles and cooking and creating fun environments for people. I visualize myself being a dive master on a boat or a sea captain or maybe just an assistant captain. So I didn't have as much responsibility, and that type of thing. Like I'd like to own a small restaurant where I just made Rogers specials every day or scoop ice cream for kids and just have something that brings a smile to your face and gets you out of bed. And, if you don't do it, nobody's going to do it. So you do have some pressure to, show up and be there, and a network of friends that you can see and be with every day. But then you really don't want to just sit down and retire and sit on the couch and watch Oprah reruns. We love Oprah, and I don't mean to dig on her every time I say that, but when I do,
I hear you. We know what you mean.
It's I think I'd live a week if I sat and did nothing, but I think I could live another 40, 50 years if I really loved what I did and it got me out of bed in the early hours of the morning and I got excited and ready and couldn't wait to tell everybody what I had in store for them, and then couldn't wait to show them and everything else. So I love that.
There's how many people have you met, Roger, that were 65 years old going on 50 and like the captains of the world, and then they retire and you see them 2 years later at 67 and they're 67 going on 87. And they're like, do what you're saying. They're watching Oprah. They're going to the dry cleaners. They're making restaurant reservations, or they turn golf into a job.
See it all the time.
I mean, just what kind of existence is that? I mean, who the hell would want to do that?
That's what scares me. And I'm pretty young, but I see it all the time. I'm so young. I got so many years ahead of me, but I don't know. The idea of retirement just seems like a death trap.
I would make I would, after that motorcycle accident, I was hoping it wasn't the motorcycle that's the death trap for you. But,
I don't think it'll ever stop.
but I was going to say, I think the retirement trick is to be able to continually, Anthony, how old are you, if you mind me asking?
24.
24. So I'm saying, what if you had a world where you could get rid of over time all the things you didn't like about your work, and at the same time you could slowly add stuff to what you like to do. And then my argument is, if you're doing stuff you want to do and not doing the stuff you want to do, don't want to do, who retires from that? Why don't you retire at 24? Why wait till 60 or 70 years old to go do that?
Yeah, I think it's a fine line. I think it's like you said, if you got all the money in the world, why not go wake up and play golf every day, right? And go to the casino. But I think you have to have some sort of drive or passion or some sort of need to want to serve, to really get that fulfilling. I mean, if you do it for years and years, you can't just go to nothing and then leave your brain empty and crazy like that. I think you always have to have something you're working on or progressing at or getting better at or trying to build, whether that's still, operating a business, being a CEO, or maybe just serving people. Or I think you got to have something like that in your life to keep you going. I don't think you can, and while it's great to wake up and play golf every morning, you can still do that. Well,
Yeah.
I think it's a balance. So
Yeah, Roger mentioned ice cream. I loved ice cream. I think though, if I ate ice cream every day, I'd hate it at some point. If you like playing golf, I think eventually that you would hate it, or
yeah,
well, most people would hate it, at least if that's all they did. They did all the time.
yeah. There's so many different things you can do out there. I mean, endless possibilities.
And to clarify, I'd like to add, uh, I would be scooping ice cream and meeting the kids, seeing their different flavors, getting to talk to them and watch those like young impressionable minds and enjoy the different kinds of ice cream and stuff like that, and just creating joy. I personally like tacos more than ice cream.
Any one of my friends that when they were in high school or college worked in an ice cream store, they all came back with that. Most of them came back with that verdict that they were sick of ice cream by the end of the summer or by the time it was ready to go back to school. But you could be the exception. I'm sure. All I can tell you is that tell me a little bit about, so the people that are listening to this podcast, what do you hope that they get out of the podcast, and specifically what can we share with them that would make a difference in the lives of the people who took the time to listen to this podcast?
That's a perfect segue into the question I've been itching to ask. So for somebody that's just getting started out, that maybe they have a little bit of a scarcity mindset or lack of experience or influence in their lives, how do you go from one, feeling that you can do better and justifying it, not having a imposter syndrome, to how do you go again 10x that and say I want to be a millionaire or a centimillionaire or a billionaire? And then three, which is more for me, is how do you justify wanting generational wealth when realistically all I want is the ability of, the five freedoms where I have the ability to do what I want, where I want, when I want, with whoever I want, and give to who I want. How do you influence somebody like that to believe in themselves and want to do that?
Well, first of all, I would say this is that the number one job of an entrepreneurial thinker is to protect his or her confidence. Confidence is everything in terms of what you do and everywhere in your life. And it's a mindset to have confidence. I think for a young person who's starting in the business, there are some intellectual shortcuts, but there's no shortcut for as Malcolm Gladwell says, to create mastery in any subject, you got to put your 10,000 hours in. And the idea is that everybody wants it yesterday, but the idea is you can't create mastery in virtually anything without 10,000 hours. I know in fact, I gave a presentation about 5 years ago called 95,370. That was the amount of hours that I put in my field. I'm well over 100,000 hours right now, but that first 10,000 is critical. And so I just think that you've just got to you've got to have focus, you have to have discipline, and you have to fall in love with the mundane. It's all about that. The other thing is, why generational wealth? I will tell you that some of the most selfish people I know in the world are people that have just enough. They have just enough for themselves, no more for anybody else, just for themselves. And so the reason to create multi-generational wealth isn't so you can just buy fancy cars and planes, but that's good if you want to do that. And luxury is nice. But the idea is that what that money can do to improve the lives of the people you touch. Meaning, my goal would be I'd love to change and affect positively 100 million people. I have the ability to affect people, but directly, could I affect the lives of 100 million people? I'm not sure. I don't think so. But with other people like yourselves and other people that we could get involved, we might be really make a difference in the lives of those people. And, I mean, there's so much divisiveness, so much strife, so much angst in the world. Imagine if we have people like us that put as much energy into abundance and for the purpose of not gluttony, but for the purpose of making other people's lives better. That would be the kind of world that I'd be proud to live in.
Absolutely.
Great response. I like the part about some people just make enough to have for themselves. I think that really kind of opens my eyes. I like that.
The other thing, there's been a lot of books written about this, Anthony, but they basically talk about the three types of people. They talk about givers, matchers, takers, and there's been a few books. I've read a few books on that. But when they talk about givers in the beginning, get a little bit of an edge. Excuse me. In the beginning, givers are always the lowest performers because they're giving and not receiving. And the takers get a little bit of an advantage because they're taking and not giving. And matchers are like, hey, I'm going to be nice to Anthony because Anthony can help me, but screw Roger because he can't do anything for me. I'm a matcher. But if you spend, a guy who's 24 years old, if you spend not months or years, but if you spend decades, Anthony, pouring into other people, you will have an army of people that want to come back and support and help you. And that's how the world works. And I think it's counterintuitive to business. Like I always think when I'm asked to speak at some big conference in the financial services industry, I find people or real estate or accounting or law or whatever, I'll come and give a speech and I'll see that the speakers that are speaking are asking about how to get referrals or how to get introductions or how to get business. And I'd rather give my talk on how to give it. I'd rather give referrals. I'd rather be able to lead with my giving arm and what I can control and try to help that other person come from underneath them and lift them up and not be attached to the income because, I don't do it with, I'm not attached to the outcome of whether they're going to come back and do it for me. It's not a quid pro quo. I'm going to do it because that makes me feel good. And ultimately, it just seems to work out. And it works out a hell of a lot better than when you're keeping score.
I love that. Yeah, that's a great mindset to have. I totally agree with that too. I mean, you definitely give a lot and you know what? Yeah, you can't count on anything, but it somehow, some way the universe makes it work for you when you're doing that.
I got a quick story. You talk about everybody. Everybody basically, their past is just a series of decisions that they made for the most part, which means your future is the decisions you're going to make going forward. But to me, the seminal moment around that was I got cut from the high school basketball team as a freshman. And I busted my ass and I made the JV team. I think I played like 43 seconds a game when we were up or down 30 points or something. And I think I've made the varsity as a junior and it was like, came off the bench like sixth or seventh man. And I think I never started a game until I was a senior. And, but I left there for a 6'2" white guy with about a 3-inch vertical leap, having thought I got the most out of my high school ability. I played with a guy who played the NBA. I had guys who won national championships in football. I mean, we're around some very talented athletes, and I was a good athlete, but not at that level. But I competed with them, and I played well. And by the time I was a senior, I got everything I could out of my ability. I wasn't a star, but I was a good contributor to that team. And so when I look back, what I realized is I'm not competing against anybody else. I'm competing against the best version of me. And so the idea is that I don't believe in competition. I believe in differentiation. That was one thing that came out of it. But the most important thing that came out of it when you talk about mindset is if I'm only competing against me, then I can be free to be your biggest cheerleader. Meaning if something good happens to me, Anthony, I want something great to happen to you. If I have $1, Roger, I hope you have 100. And so the idea is I can truly be happy for other people because I'm not competing against you.
Mm-hmm.
I think we've kind of,
like that.
I think we've kind of mentioned the theme of one of my favorite books, and when I started getting more into an entrepreneurial mindset, I started listening to books on Audible. And the third book I listened to is The Go Giver by Bob Burg.
That's one of the books I'm talking about. Yeah.
And when you look at it, you see, oh, you've got to hit these, hurdles, you've got to hit these sales. And if you focus on that, you're going to, miss the real big picture. And if you focus on helping everybody else, then you have that team behind you, the, rising tides raises all ships, all the cliches that go into it. And every time I listen to that book and I get to the point where the key was Rachel's coffee, and Rachel's coffee was like just the most intelligent person that happened to be an assistant to an entrepreneur, turned out to be the thing that created the biggest deal that even his friends that he had referred business to thought that he was so big because he gave so much business that they gave him the biggest deal. And the fact that he had been nice to Rachel and she knew everything about coffee made his biggest deal and blew up his, skills and success level and everything else. It's definitely one of my favorite books ever.
Yeah, that's, yeah, as I said, I've got to get the names, or you should release the names. There's 2 or 3 books that have similar themes that I've read on that. That was one of them. I mean, I also think the other thing you want to look at is being a voracious reader is also important. I think if you don't read, you're behind the 8 ball.
Absolutely. And I loathe getting the emails that are spam and everything else and spending so much time that could be growing my mindset, learning more things, and having to go through a couple hundred emails a day that are often just mundane.
It's funny. We're now in political season with the presidential election coming. It's got to be 50, 60 political emails a day. I'd like to cut that down by about 100%.
For
Yeah, I
sure.
love it.
But hey, I got to tell you guys, I appreciate you guys, appreciate what you're doing. Is if there's some way that I can help support you, please let me know. And I just enjoyed spending time with you guys this afternoon.
Awesome. I have one more question and then we'll have Anthony lead us into the final 4. But if you could go back, and I think it was 95,306 hours, and talk to yourself at age 24, 25, what lessons would you give to yourself?
I think the most important thing is I would have worried a lot less. In my 20s and my 30s and my 40s, I worried about a lot of stuff that, quite frankly, if the actual bad thing happened to me, would have been less painful than all the worrying that I did about it. It was like they used to talk about these Cuban prisons that every day they would beat the prisoners every day. And it was the anxiety. You prayed every day that you were beaten first, because the torture wasn't the beating. The torture was listening to people scream as the guards got closer to you and closer to you and closer to you till you got your beating of the day. And the gift was being beaten early in the day. And I think it's the same thing with your mind. It's like I used to worry about stuff. I couldn't sleep some nights. I was worried about, and quite frankly, there was a lot of wasted energy that I could have used for more productive things.
I totally relate.
Love it. Well,
Yeah.
Mark, you ready for the final 4?
Let's go. I'm a huge college basketball fan. So my happy place is Indiana University with the Hoosiers winning the national championship. So Final Four is my you're talking my language.
Okay, here we go. Your number 1, your favorite business book.
Oh God, there's so many. I think Outliers, Malcolm Gladwell, or Who Not How, Dan Sullivan book we mentioned before. There are too many to name.
Okay, we'll go with those 2. What is your favorite way to give back?
I think they always say the good ones tell, the great ones ask. And so I aspire to be a great one. And the way I aspire to be a great one is to listen.
Okay. Love it. And Roger, I'm skipping a B again. I got question 4 already, but can you do 3?
What brings you happiness?
What brings you happiness? That's what it is.
Actually, my wife and my 5 children, They also the kids bring me a lot of solace too, but much more joy. But yeah, it's seeing them grow and develop and become great productive members of society, that brings me great joy. Also, if you want to be a little pedantic, it's seeing the Hoosiers hang another banner and win another next. Yeah,
That's right.
Do you
Hey, in
have
our final. Oh, go ahead.
do you have grandchildren, Mark?
I do not. My kids are 20. I started late, so I've got kids between 17 and 25. So I've got all 4 in college next year, and my oldest Lucas worked
I've got 27 to 15. My
7 to 25, 17 to 25. You're talking about you.
I have a fiance that we're about to get married in June, and she has 5 children. So our ranges are 27 to 15. And I'm looking forward to the day that I don't have to train the kids. I don't have to be the authority. I don't have to do anything. I can just spoil the grandkids, which is an easier relationship in my mind, where everything you do now with the kids, you're guiding them and leading them and teaching them. And when they're grandkids, they've got their own parents to guide and lead them. So I can just spoil them and have fun. I'm looking forward to that day. Question 4.
Question 4. What does your future retirement look like, or do you have one?
No, I think that I'm going to have more productivity in the next 5 years than I've had in the last 50. And, one of the keys to life is your future has to be bigger than your past. So retirement to me is a foreign word. I don't know what I'd do. I'd go get a job. I don't know what I'd do for retirement. I'm not sure. What I want to be in creation and fascination mode for the rest of my life. And so that is not, that to me, that's like that's a dirty word. That's George Carlin would add that to the 7 dirty words. Retirement should be the 8th dirty word for me, at least.
Amazing, Mark. Great having you on. You display a great characteristic of leadership, I want to say, and definitely learned a lot from you today. So thank you, and appreciate you having you.
Hey, right back at you guys. I've really enjoyed the time you're spending, and as a fellow with 5 children, I think we're brothers in arms. And Anthony, I got to tell you, I wish I was 24 years old. The future that you have, if you don't kill yourself on a motorcycle, I think your future is as bright, and you've got an opportunity to do some incredible things. I'm gonna keep an eye on you and see how well you do.
Awesome, appreciate you.
All right, hey, thanks guys.
Awesome.
Have a great day.
Hope you got value from this episode, and if you have a minute, then take the time to leave an honest written review for the podcast, because we take those reviews seriously, and it'll help us serve you better on the next episodes. And most importantly, be sure to start taking action so you can control your financial future today.